This channel is supported by Truefire.
Well, what is this all about then? It's the Truefire Summer Music Festival. What I'm going to tell you about, you can get 1 month of All Access for just $1. The All Access, you can dip in and out of every single course on Truefire, so that's a really great way to get some awesome courses down you.
Some of you may recall that back a few months ago at the start of the year, I bought a bunch of Fender guitars, and this was actually my favourite sort of one of them. This is the one that I kept of them all. I bought a Player 2 in white, that was lovely. Rolled fretboard edges on that one. I bought a American Professional in pine. I had tried an American Vintage 1961. I tried like a real custom shop from Anthony as well. And a couple of road worn, like a 50s and a road worn 60s. I think of all of them, my favourite was the road worn 60s in white. Now, I think Chris, you've got that one. But at the time, like I said, this was my favourite one specifically, and we'll get into some things that I really like about this guitar as well, but I did want to flag something that I'm not sure I'm totally comfortable with, this idea that this is maybe what the level of fretwork is coming out of the Mexican factory on a £1,000 guitar. I didn't want to just complain about this just offhand, but let me know what you think, because I've seen and held a few Vinteras in my hands, and I just checked online whether people were, find that this was something like what their experience was like too. Let's talk about some of the positives. I love the neck shape of this. It's quite a bit chunkier than the Player 2, and it was even chunkier than the American Vintage 1961 that I tried. So I think there is great potential in this guitar. The finish, I think, looks incredible. I can't fault anything about that. I can't really fault the way that it's put together parts-wise. I think some people might not like the mismatchiness of this, but I think it looks pretty good. I like the vintage tint on the neck. That looks pretty classy. It doesn't feel sticky in the hand. It's poly, not nitro, but it just feels really good. There's just this one area where it falls down. I guess the other tiny downside for me is maybe it's a little bit heavier than I would have ordinarily opted for, but that's kind of just what it is, isn't it? It's like a bunch of wood put together. The weight is going to vary. especially on this, you know, like a mass-produced guitar. But when I look at the frets, and I'll talk you through it with a camera now,
That's even better, but you can sort of see the fretboard edge here as well. And you'll probably get some idea. And this is something I've seen on other Vinteras. I think the Player 2, they rolled the fretboard edges. So it's kind of interesting, like, some of their guitars, like that fret there is particularly not great. Like, within the Fender factory, there's not necessarily a set standard for, you know, some of these guitars, these necks, we will roll the edges, some we won't. But again, the question for me is, does that seem like the sort of thing that you might expect on a guitar that they're charging £1,000 for, made in Mexico? I don't think this is just a style thing, because if you look here, I think this is a Chinese-made Donna, and you just see the fret edges are tidier, less sharp. And as I saw in that Warmoth video yesterday, that Warmoth will sell a neck that is basically like this, and all parts will as well. And although they say like it's ready to play, they do say that they haven't done any fine fretwork on it. And this is maybe something like how you might describe this coming out of the Fender factory. It's like, is that fine fretwork? Looking at the nut as well, they're not really fully slotted down, so you've got this kind of fairly high nut action. Whereas ideally, again, I think on another guitar you see that these are actually recessed into the nut a bit, and a better kind of nut action. So we're going to have less intonation issues on this guitar. Fret edges here. You know, is it perfect? Maybe not. But no sharp edges here because they've been worked on by someone. I think. This is a Sterling Cutlass CT50. Fret ends specifically is what I'm talking about here. Like, they've clearly been like curved off. Now, whether that's a machine or not, I'm not entirely sure. But what I can say for sure is that in your hand, you're not feeling like a sharp fret bit on top. Whereas on the Fender, you definitely are, because it's really a pretty... Like, has that been polished? Maybe. Has it been sanded? I don't know. It doesn't look to me like it's been worked through the grains, and it doesn't look to me like it's a properly, you know, like if you take that to a proper tech, they'll get that up together in no time. But again, the question is that sort of £1,000 guitar type level fretwork? It would be my question. Like, there are no inherent problems with the frets. It's just that there's not really been any of that finer fret work detail done on it either. Here there's finish on this fret edge, which means I think that this comes out of the neck department and the frets. Then they put the strings on it after it's been finished. So you put the frets on, then you do the finishing, sand back this or whatever. And since the strings have gone on here, these fret ends have not been touched. Right? I think that's a bit of detective work, right? That's the one area where I feel like it falls down. So I kind of wanted to just ask your opinions on that, whether you think that that is kind of acceptable, and whether you expect to actually factor in the cost of taking
basically most guitars around sort of this price, maybe even over this price, would you factor in the price of taking it to a tech and just assume that it's going to be some work needed? Because I think maybe that is a fairly reasonable sort of thought. Although, again, like, the thing with this is, I can't really fault it. You know, even with a 7.25 inch radius, I'm able to get the kind of Gilmore-y, well, not quite Gilmore, like Gilmore if he was a worse player, bends off. And so, you know, I'm expecting that there must have been some level of work gone into that, because just pressing a fret in and gluing it, you wouldn't expect necessarily. To be able to do that sort of thing is quite impressive. So it's not like the fretwork, the fret job in general is even dodgy. It's just that this attention to the fret is really an area where I think some of the competition are sort of putting Fender a little bit to shame there. And I think that's a shame, because in almost every other way, this is a really great guitar. So again, you take this to a tech, how much is that going to cost? Like a bit of attention to the frets, you know, maybe you factor that in and you end up with actually a great looking, great playing guitar. So maybe that's what I should do, because I do think it looks really, really good. I think it sounds good and it plays well. And like I say, the fact that you can do, you know, 2 fret or 4 fret, how many frets is it, bends on it, and it not choke out on a vintage radius is again something that's pretty impressive.